Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Again, I'm Walt Preddy from the Advocate for Business Office here at the Workers' Compensation Board. So this presentation, it's the requirements for businesses applying for government permits, license, or contracts for code enforcement officials. So what is the Workers' Comp Board? We were created in 1914 after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in 1911. The board oversees all workers' compensation, disability benefits, and paid family leave. We received the reports of the injuries, authorized payments, as well as healthcare providers. Currently, we have over 1,000 employees across New York State. And if there were to be a dispute as to whether the injury occurred on the job or was compensable, we would hold a hearing to adjudicate all those disputes. Our office, we're a smaller office, about 5 of us in the office. Our advocate's Anthony Tomaselli. We help individual businesses with their coverage and compliance issues. We work to educate business owners and government personnel, as we're doing today, on the workers' compensation system. And we meet with business associations, employer groups, listen to their concerns. We report directly to our chairperson, Frida Foster. So if there's a common theme that we're hearing regarding the system and how we can make it better for the employers or the injured workers, we can bring those concerns back to her for potential changes in rules and regulations. So workers' comp law, Section 57 of the workers' comp laws and Section 220 of disability benefits law essentially says that no permit, license, or contract shall be issued without proper proof of workers' compensation and disability benefits, paid family leave insurance, or the CE 200, a certificate attestation for exemption. So this covers anytime you're applying for, whether it's a homeowner getting a building permit, a restaurant getting a food service permit from their county, any type of license, if it's a home improvement license that's issued by the town or county government, any contract with New York State, et cetera. The applicant has to show that they have proof of coverage in their own name and FEIN number, or if they're exempt, they would fill out that CE 200. We'll go over some of these coverage basics. Okay. So workers' compensation covers anything any type of injury or illness that happens on the job. Right? It provides both medical and wage replacement. So if you're injured in the course of your employment or become ill through your employment, you'd be entitled to all healthcare benefits. You'd never pay any type of co-payment, lab fee, doctor's fee, et cetera, testing fee. And you're also entitled to wage replacement. You receive up to 2/3 of the average weekly wage in New York State, which is approximately $1,790. So if you made more than that on a weekly basis, you would receive 2/3 of that. If you made less than that on a weekly basis, you would receive 2/3 of your actual pay. And it's like most insurance, it's there to protect both parties. In this case, both the employer as well as their employees. Okay. Disability benefits covers anything that happens off the job. So if you went home tonight, you're raking leaves and mowing your lawn, and you injured yourself, you weren't able to work, that would fall under the disability benefits law. You have to be under the care of a physician or a healthcare professional. There's only limited wage replacement on the disability side. It's $170 per week. There's no medical benefit. So if due to that off-the-job injury, any type of medical benefit will be picked up by your health insurance and not under the workers' comp. You have to file that claim within 30 days of becoming disabled. And then paid family leave. Paid family leave came into existence about 7 years ago. And it provides job protected paid time off to bond with a new child, whether it's a birth, adoption, or foster care, or to care for a sick family member that has a serious health condition, or to assist when a family member is deployed abroad on active military duty. Okay, so who needs coverage and who doesn't need coverage? Businesses with employees need coverage, all right? And workers' compensation is a day one insurance. So the moment you have an employee in employee or you hire somebody, you need to have that coverage in place the first day that individual is working for the business, right? With disability and paid family leave, you have 4 weeks from the 30th day of their employment, so about 2 months, depending on their work schedule. But anytime a business is hiring an individual, they would have to have that coverage on the first day that they have the employee working for them. And how we define an employee, it's anyone that's providing services to a for-profit business, all right? So even if you have a friend helping out in the business or a family member, whether they're paid or not paid, we don't really look at that. If they're assisting in the business and they're integral to the success of the business, they would be considered an employee under the workers' comp law. And then any compensating individual that's providing services to a non-for-profit can also be determined to be an employee of that non-for-profit. So if you're working for a non-for-profit and you're being compensated, you would be considered an employee and there would be benefits. The exception there is clergy and teachers in a 501c3. Okay, who's not required to carry workers' compensation coverage? In all these instances I'm going to touch on, these individuals or persons aren't required to carry it, but they can always go out and get a policy. So if you're a sole proprietor, you have no other employees, one man, one woman operation, you do not need to have workers' compensation coverage. If it's partners in a partnership that have no employees, they would be exempt from providing coverage. If it's a one or two person corporation that has no other employees, as long as each one of those two-person corporation, as long as each one of those individuals holds one office and one share of stock, and between the two of them, they own 100% of the stock, then they would be exempt. If it's a three-person corporation, they would need coverage. One of those individuals would be considered to be an employee under the workers' comp law. And then LLCs, if the only people that are being compensated are members of that LLC, they have no other employees, they would be exempt from having coverage. Again, just to reiterate that these individuals can get coverage for themselves because if that sole proprietor would become injured on the job, there would be no coverage for them in terms of wage replacement or medical. Generally, your health insurance carrier is not going to, want to pick up that claim that for something that happened on the job. So if you wanted to protect yourself as that sole proprietor or one or two personal corporation partner, et cetera, you can get a policy and it would obviously cover yourself. Okay, some of the coverage issues that we run across, independent contractors and subcontractors, and we'll talk about in some slides coming up what discerns an independent contractor versus an employee. If you're paying that person on a 1099, that doesn't necessarily mean they're an independent contractor. If they're materially participating in your business and it's the same type of business, so if you're a roofer and you're hiring, a laborer, that individual, regardless of how you pay them at 1099, et cetera, you cannot call them an independent contractor. They would be considered an employee for workers' comp purposes. Family members, if you have, a son or daughter maybe home for the summer from college or off from school, they're helping in the business, they would be considered to be an employee. Borrowed employees, essentially, each business needs coverage on their own name and FEIN number. So if you own multiple businesses, you can't take an employee from business B and have him or her come work for business A for the day without having coverage for that individual under business A. There's also a homeowner's workers' compensation rider that covers if you're a homeowner and you have to have a homeowner's policy, that covers casual employment in and around your home. So if you're paying, a lawn service or the teenager next door to mow your lawn, there's some workers' comp coverage there. Nobody's going to say that that individual is an employee of yours and you need to go out and get a policy as a homeowner. Leased employees, if it's a PEO, professional employer organization, that the leasing company can get coverage for you on your behalf. Non-for-profit organizations, again, unless it's a 501c3 and it's a teacher or clergy, if they're compensating people, they would need to have coverage. If you're working for a local charity and you're delivering stuff and they're just compensating you for your mileage, then that does not count. But if they're giving you a stipend or they're paying you for your time, you would need that entity, that 501c3 or that not-for-profit would need to have coverage. Out-of-state employers working in New York State, New York has very generous workers' comp benefits. So if you're an out-of-state employer and you're sending employees into New York State, you need to have New York coverage, a policy in New York State, or you need to have your insurance carrier from that other state, say Connecticut or Massachusetts, write 3A in your New York policy. And that basically, says that they are aware you're sending employees into New York State. And if one of those individuals were to become injured on the job in New York, they would pay New York level benefits. Religious organizations, there's no exemption for religious organizations. So whether it's the Mennonites, et cetera, the Amish, there's no exemption there. If they meet the qualifications, if they have employees, they would need to have coverage. Student interns, they're considered to be employees, whether they are being compensated or not. So if you have, bringing in an intern for a period of time to help out in your business, you're not compensating that individual. If you don't otherwise have coverage, you would need coverage at that point because they would be considered an employee for workers' compensation purposes in New York State. Temp service agencies, if you're getting your employees from like a Labor Ready or an organization like that, generally they are considered to be employees of that temp service agency. So if you're a sole proprietor and you're gutting a house or flipping a home and you went and got all your employees through Manpower or another temp agency, you would not need coverage, but you would want to make sure that that temp agency has coverage and they are covering them. Volunteers, we always say there's no volunteers in a for-profit business. So if you have somebody assisting in your business, even if it's just a friend helping you on a weekend, to build a deck, and you don't usually have an employee, that individual, you need coverage at that point, as that individual would be considered an employee of the business. General contractors, they're liable for all workers' compensation claims of any uninsured subcontractors. So what we recommend is that the general contractors make sure that their subs have a policy and that they add that general contractor as a certificate holder. All right, and this allows there's two purposes for this. One, it helps protect them because now that sub has a policy, they won't be deemed liable. So if one of the sub's employees get injured on the job. And by being a certificate holder on that policy, should anything in that policy change, if that subcontractor doesn't pay the premium or they cancel that subcontractor for underwriting purposes, as a certificate holder, you'd get notification that that policy has been canceled or terminated. And then you can go to that subcontractor and say, hey, I noticed that your policy was canceled for non-payment of premium on September 16th, what's going on here, et cetera. And also in terms of keeping your premium down, what the insurance carriers do is they charge you premium for any uninsured subcontractors that you have. So if you hire a subcontractor does not have their own insurance, when they come in and do their payroll premium audit, if they see that you paid a subcontractor, they're going to ask for that insurance certificate. If you cannot produce an insurance certificate, they're going to charge you premium on what you paid that subcontractor, that uninsured subcontractor. So in order to save yourself money and as well as protect yourself as a general contractor, if you can produce that insurance certificate from that sub, again, you'll protect yourself and they will not charge you premium on anything you paid that subcontractor. The Construction Industry Fair Play Act, it determines whether a worker is an employee or an independent contractor. There's 3 criteria that must be met, okay? And it also determines when a sole proprietor, partnership, or corporation will be considered a separate business entity, and that's a 12 criteria test. They have to meet all these criteria that we list on the following slides to not be considered an employee of that subcontractor, but a separate business entity that is subject to the law regarding its own employees. So you want to make sure that, you look at these criteria and make sure that they meet them so that they're exempt as far as being an employee. Are they free from direction and control? Okay, that means like, are you telling them when to show up? I want you here at 8 a.m., work to 4 p.m., et cetera. Do they perform service outside the usual course of business for that employer? Back to my roofing thing. If the roofer's hiring a laborer to take the shingles off or to carry shingles up the ladder, that's their usual course of business. Okay. But if the roofer's hiring somebody, a mason, to put bricks on the chimney before they put the roof on, that's outside of their usual course of business. They're a roofer and not a mason. Are they engaged in independently established trade? Again, like you're a framer and you're hiring an electrician, or you're a general contractor and you're hiring somebody to pour that foundation. Okay, that's a separate trade. As long as they met all those 3 criteria, they would be considered to be independent. Okay, and these are the 12 criteria for a sole proprietor, partnership, or corporation that has to meet to show that they're not an employee. Again, are they free from direction and control? Not subject to cancellation when the work with the contractor ends? Do they have their own tools and capital? Do they bring their own equipment or a personal vehicle to the job site? Okay. Do they have their own profits and losses? Do they make their services available to the general public? Or are they just working for that same contractor over and over? Do they file their own tax returns? They perform services under their own name. So they have their own business name. They're separate from what the hiring contractor is. Do they pay for their own licenses and permits in their own name? Okay. Again, bring their own tools, hire their own employees without that contractor approval, pay their employees, and don't get reimbursed from the contractor and report that income to the IRS. Can they perform similar services for others when they want? And do they represent themselves as employees, as his own employees to its customers? Okay. So again, out-of-state companies working in New York State, as of 2007, if you're an out-of-state employer and you're sending employees to work in New York State, there's two ways you can meet that requirement. New York currently has about 240 insurance companies that are licensed to write business in New York State. So if you're coming in from Connecticut, Massachusetts, and you're insured, with the Hartford or Travelers or any one of the other, 230 or so insurance companies that are licensed to write in New York State, they would list New York in section 3A of that Connecticut or Massachusetts policy. And again, that says, that, hey, if one of these individuals becomes injured on the job in New York, we will pay New York level benefits. If you're insured through somebody that does not license to write in New York State, you'd have to go out and get a New York State policy if you're going to send employees into New York. And again, you can go to the private markets. There's about 240 carriers. We also have the New York State Insurance Fund. They provide workers' comp, disability, and paid family leave insurance, and they could write you that policy. Okay. The proof of workers' comp. So whenever you're issuing any type of permit, license, or contract, you want to just accept the following proof of workers' compensation insurance from the individual that's applying for that permit. The private insurance carriers issue the certificate in form C-105.2. All right, if the entity is insured with the New York State Insurance Fund, they use form U-26.3. Pretty much the same exact form, same information, just two different form numbers, and we have examples of those coming up. And then if the entity was self-insured, they would show you the SI-12. Okay, if they had group self-insurance, they would show the GSI 105.2. The SI-12 is not as common, and the GSI 105.2 is not as common as this is as a C-105.2 or the U-26.3. And then if the entity was exempt from having coverage, they would show you that CE-200. Again, just to reiterate, because we've had this question when we've done this webinar in the past, the BP1 was used previously as an exemption for homeowners. It's been discontinued for almost the last 8 years now. So all the reasons for exemption as far as a homeowner, they've been moved over to the CE-200. So if that homeowner is getting a permit, building permit to do some work in and around their house, they would fill out the CE-200 if they met that criteria, and they wouldn't show the BP1. That form is no longer valid. What is the legal name of an employer? So each business that has employees, they need to have the coverage in their own name and FEIN number. Okay, so if whatever they're applying for on that permit, that's how they would show you the coverage. So if it's ABC Corp, that you're issuing that permit for, then they would show you coverage in the name of ABC Corp. And again, one policy can insure many legal entities so long as there's common majority ownership. So the insurance carrier on those insurance certificates will issue a policy with, as long as that individual has common majority ownership over other entities, they can put all 6, 8, or 10 of those on the same policy and with their names and FEIN numbers. So if you receive a certificate that has more than one entity on it, obviously just check to make sure the entity that you're issuing that permit, license, or contract to is on that specific insurance certificate. Okay, here's a copy of the C-105.2. That box in the upper left-hand corner, box 1A. Just want to verify that's the legal name of the insured. And then certificate holder in box 2. That's going to be the town or the government, New York State or city of Schenectady there as a certificate holder. And again, if something were to change that policy, that certificate holder would be notified if that policy was canceled or not renewed, etc. And the only way the certificate can be obtained is from the insurance agent or the carrier. So if you have somebody coming in and they need to get their certificate, they would reach out. If they used an insurance agent, they would reach out to that agent. Or if they went with a carrier directly, they would reach out to that carrier. With the New York State Insurance Fund, the the insured can go right online and print their certificate. They log into their account, they can print that certificate. Also, it'll show the FEIN number. You want to make sure that that FEIN number, tax ID number, matches with whatever you're putting on that permit, license, or contract. It shows the policy effective date, the name of the carrier. So obviously you want to make sure that, the permit is taking place, or the work is taking place during that policy period. And then it'll be signed by either the agent or representative of the carrier, and dated. This is a U-26.3. This is a certificate that the New York State Insurance Fund issues to their insureds. Policyholder name, then again, that certificate holder, it'll show the policy number, the policy period, and then the date. And again, they would get that directly from the New York State Insurance Fund, either by calling them, or they can, again, go online and print it from their account. The Accord form is not acceptable proof of workers' comp. It's more of a certificate of liability insurance. We don't oversee that issue. Usually municipalities have their own requirements as far as liability, but this is the form for that liability insurance if your municipality required it, but they cannot use this form for proof of workers' compensation insurance. So you would not want to accept this for the workers' comp. It's only those certificates of insurance that we talked about. If they do need to get a CE 200, certificate of attestation for exemption, they can go to our website, and they can click on it. It'll bring them right over to the businessexpress.ny.gov homepage. And under that, just look under top requests, go on there and click on that, and it's online. It takes about 7-8 minutes to fill that out online. And with the CE 200, they are job specific. So if an individual is coming in, to a municipality to get a permit to put a roof on a specific home, they give you that CE 200. They're doing it by themselves, or it's a two-person corporation, etc. They meet one of those exemptions. That CE 200 is for that particular building permit. Okay, and then if they come in a week later, a month later, what have you, to get another building permit for a different building permit, they would need to submit a new CE 200. Sometimes I know municipalities, and talking to them, what they'll do with the C105.2 or the U26.3 is, if that contractor submits that form, the C105.2 or U26.3, they'll hang on to it, and then they come back in, they'll just photocopy and put it in the file with that new building permit, as long as it's still within that effective date of the policy. But just to drive the point home, that CE 200 is job specific. So anytime that individual is getting another permit, or another contractor license, they would need to submit a new CE 200. And again, it's for if you're applying for workers' comp. Just to make sure we understand here, since workers' comp is a day one insurance, there are instances where somebody would be exempt from disability benefits and paid family leave, but need to show workers' comp. So if the job was taking place in New York State, and the company was only going to send employees in for less than 30 days in that calendar year, they would need workers' comp because they need it on day one that they're doing the job, or sending those employees into New York, and they'd be exempt on the disability side. So it could be a situation where they hand you that certificate, C105.2, to show that they do have workers' comp, but then they give you the CE 200 for the disability because it's a quick turnaround job. We're only going to be sending employees in New York State for 2 weeks, so we're under that 30-day threshold, so we don't need the disability benefits insurance. Okay. And again, the CE 200, this is a picture of it here on the right of the slide. Looks pretty much like an insurance certificate. It's going to show the applicant name in that left box, and then what the business was applying for. They're from the city of Albany. They were getting a building permit, and then it shows the reason that the applicant checked as far as why they are exempt. So one person owned corporation, individual owning all the stock, holding all the offices, and other than the corporate owner, there are no employees, day laborers, lease, borrowed, part-time employees, stockholders, unpaid volunteers, including the family members or subcontractors. The applicant goes online, fills that out, they print it, sign and date it, certificate numbers on it, and then you would accept that. You just want to make sure that they sign and date it, make sure that the work location matches the address on the permit application, and that their name and FEIN matches up with that of which is going on the permit. Okay. For the DB disability benefits, the certificate of insurance, it's the same this time around for both the workers, for both the private carriers as well as the New York State Insurance Fund. They both issue Form DB 120.1. If the entity was self-insured for disability benefits, they would show you Form DB 155. And again, the CE 200 form is that exemption form if they were exempt from providing disability benefits and paid family leave. Okay, this is a copy of that certificate. Again, the legal name and entity, which should match up what's going on that permit, license, or contract. Box 2 shows that certificate holder, which would be the issuing agency of that permit, license, or contract. And they get those again from the DB 120.1 comes from their insurance agent or their carrier. Okay. Some of the penalties, if you don't have coverage, for every 10 days out of compliance, it's up to $2,000, which comes out to about $72,000 a year. If you have up to 5 insured and uninsured employees, it can be a misdemeanor with subject to a maximum $5,000 penalty. More than 5 employees can be a felony, subject to a maximum $50,000 penalty. And misclassification is the same as being uninsured. So misclassification is if you were, reporting to your insurance carrier, you're a roofer, saying, oh, I have, this much, administrative payroll, office type of payroll, and less roofing payroll. If you're misclassifying those employees or that payroll in the wrong classification code, that's the same as being uninsured. So you want to make sure that you're, reporting like, okay, this is my roof, this is what I'm paying under this classification to the roofers, and this is what, I have an administrative or secretarial payroll. And your carrier and your insurance agent will assist you in that. But you want to make sure that those numbers are, you're not intentionally classifying payroll in a class code that's less premium than what the actual employee is doing. And then there's also the debarment list. If you do not have workers' compensation coverage, you're barred for a 1-year period from bidding on or being awarded any type of public work contract or subcontract with New York State, any municipal corporation, town, etc. And that period, the ban is for a 1-year period. Okay, so you want to make sure if you're a business owner that you have that insurance run continually and you pay the premium on time, because if you are canceled, you are on that debarment list, you can't get any type of permit, license, or contract from any government entity in New York for a 1-year period. And if the ban is 5 years, if there's any type of felony conviction. Okay. Some of the other non-compliance penalties, we have investigators issue stop work orders. They go to a business and they see that the business does not have coverage, they have employees, they'll issue a stop work order, which will close down the business until which time they can go out and get that coverage. You're also barred from bidding on any type of public work projects if you have any type of stop work order. And then if there is a claim and you're uninsured, all right, the workers' comp pierces that corporate veil. So you can be directly sued as a sole proprietor, partner, president, or secretary or treasurer of that business. So you want to make sure that you keep that coverage up, because if you have an uninsured claim, you are personally liable for that claim as a sole proprietor or president or partner or secretary of that business. It's a quick snapshot of our website. Right on the lower right-hand side of the slide, does employer have coverage? You can go right on it, you can click and you can see, if an employer does have coverage, basically see the same information that our compliance folk would see on our website. You click that button, you come up to this, and then you go down that little search, the green bar there, search for employer coverage. Okay, and you would get that. Also, we have the whistleblower form. It's CE 150RF. If you want to know, notify the board if there's an issue at a job site or the employee was, filing a CE 200 and he had 9 employees up on the roof. The submission, it automatically sends the complaint to our proper district for handling. So it's filed in Syracuse, would go out to the Syracuse office, etc. It's an online form. It's totally optional where you put in your personal information. So, it's anonymous if you want it to be. You can fill in, who referred them or who's filling out the form, but you don't have to. That employer's coverage search, on this particular case, we put in Proctor's, which is a theater down here in Schenectady, New York. Come up and show you every business that has the Proctor's name. Find the one you're exactly looking for. Click on it. Okay, and it'll show you that it has coverage in place. If you don't see that end date, that means the coverage is good. The policies for workers' comp are written on a 1-year basis, just like your auto insurance or your homeowners. So as long as there's no end date there, then the coverage is in place. As far as when an entity is filing that workers' compensation insurance or their exemption, you want to make sure that they submit only those approved forms. So again, the C-105.2, U-26.3, or the CE-200, if they are exempt, you want to make sure that the legal name on that form matches the legal name that's going on the permit, license, or contract. And again, the FEIN or that social security number matches up both from the form and that contract. If you want to follow us, we have some social media channels, Twitter or X as it's called now, Facebook, Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel where this presentation as well as other presentations that we give are available. We're also on LinkedIn, and you can sign up for notifications via email if you'd like. Our office, again, our phones are staffed from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. If you need any help, you have any follow-up questions, feel free to give us a call. Again, it's a small office, but you'll get somebody on the phone. If you happen to get our voicemail, that call will be returned the same day. Again, 1-888-486-3331. If you have a question you want to email that to us, feel free to do that. We'll put that response in writing so you can have proof of that. advocatebusiness@wcb.ny.gov. And then you can go to our section of the website and look, there's more information as far as who needs coverage, et cetera, and some of the things that we do as the Advocate for Business Office. You can find out at wcb.ny.gov/AFB. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Nobody else can see your questions. Only Ali and I can see them. So don't be embarrassed about the question or what have you. We're the only ones that see them. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll come right back and answer any questions that you have. Okay, so the question was asked about, can you talk more about the religious organizations? Again, there's no religious exemption for New York State workers' compensation. So whether it's the Mennonites, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Amish, et cetera, if they have employees, they need coverage. Okay, if they don't meet the exemption as far as 1 or 2 person corporation, or they're not an LLC, if they're bringing people onto that job site, they generally need coverage. Okay, there's no letter that they can give you or any type of form that exempts them from a religious standpoint. So you want to make sure that the rules would apply the same to them as it would anybody else, that they either show you that CE-200, showing you that they're exempt for one of the reasons listed on the CE-200, which is not including a religious exemption, or they have that C-105.2 or the U-26.3. So the question came in, our suggestion, we roll call for the people listed on the CE-200, or do you have another method? As a code enforcement official or somebody that's issuing that permit, again, you're not liable. That CE-200 is a legal document. It's a legal affidavit. So the individuals that fill that out are doing that under penalty of perjury. So if you get a CE-200, you accept it, and then it's found out that it was fraudulent, the board there's not anybody that's going to come after you as a code enforcement official or the person that's issuing that permit, license, or contract. If you want to notify our office, if you think there's something amiss with that CE-200, the individual got a CE-200 and you went out to check the job site and there's 15 people up on that roof, by all means, call us or fill out that CE-150, that whistleblower form that we talked about, and report that to us. We'll be happy to send an investigator out there, but you don't have to do any type of roll call. You say, does it pass the sniff test? But that's a legal affidavit that under penalty of perjury that the applicant is filling out. So it's on them, so to speak. It's not on the code enforcement official for accepting that. If you think it might be fraudulent, please contact us and we'll see what we can do as far as getting an investigator to that particular job site. That's another reason why the CE-200 is job specific, because there's a job site, you have to fill out where the job is taking place. So if we wanted to investigate that, we can. So we know where that permit was issued for, what building or what house or commercial property it was issued for. So that's another check and balance within the system to make sure that, each permit gets a new CE 200. The question came in, if the employee's only on the job site for 20 hours in a given week, does the employer need workers' comp coverage? Yeah, again, it's even if it's 2 hours. If you have an employee, regardless of full-time, part-time, how many hours they work, you need to have coverage. Workers' comp is written, the premium, by job classification and payroll. So, if you're hiring somebody for a few hours a week, your payroll is going to be less, or your workers' compensation insurance premium will be less than, if you're hiring those same individuals for 30, 40 hours a week or what have you. But yeah, it's a day one insurance, part-time, full-time, it doesn't matter. There's no cutoff as to the number of hours that individual's working. If you're hiring somebody to help out or whatever, you need to have coverage. So the question came in. So every single permit needs a C-105.2, U-26.3, SI-12, or CE-200. That's correct. Yeah, it's one of those forms where they only acceptable proof when you're issuing any type of government permit, license, or contract. You would need one of those. Again, the CE 200 is job specific. So if it's a contractor's doing several jobs, they would need one. That individual needs to submit that CE 200 for each one. As far as the C-105.2, U-26.3, if you wanted to keep that on file for that particular contractor and make a photocopy of that, there's no issue with that. That'd be more of like a town thing if they would accept that. But the CE 200, C-105.2 or U-26.3 needs to be collected for each permit. You shouldn't issue permit without it. So what replacement should be in place, if any, for the BP1? The CE 200 has taken the place of the BP1. So when you go online to fill out that CE 200, the first thing that pops up is, are you filing it as a homeowner or a business? So if it's a homeowner that's getting some work done on their property that might be exempt from coverage, obviously they check the homeowner. So that the CE 200 acts as the BP1 did 7-8 years ago, but is now no longer accessible or acceptable for proof of workers' comp or exemption. So you want to make sure you have that CE 200. So if you have a homeowner coming in that needs to show that they're exempt because they're doing the work themselves, or they're hiring somebody for less than 40 hours, etc., you would want to direct them to that CE 200, and then you'd fill that out if they met one of those exemptions. A question just came in. Does the CE 200 form have to be approved by the WC, Workers' Compensation Board? No, it's something that the applicant goes online, fills in the information, prints it, signs and dates it, and gives that to the building inspector. We do not approve the CE 200. Again, it's a legal affidavit, so they're attesting to the fact that they're exempt for one of those reasons under penalty of perjury, and we don't have to sign off on it. If they just give it directly to that building department or entity that's seeking help. And also, just so you know, that CE 200 is just in the issuance of permits, license, or contracts. So one individual can't give it to another individual to show that they're exempt. It doesn't hold any weight from contractor to contractor, what have you. It's just if you're getting a permit, license, or contract. So somebody said, do we have another paper form for individuals that aren't computer savvy instead of the CE 200? You can email or call our office. We have a paper version of that form. We would email it out to the applicant. They would have to either scan and email it back to us or send it, through the postal service back to us. We would manually create them a CE 200 and mail it back for them. Obviously, that process is going to take a few days or a week even. So hopefully that individual doesn't need the permit right away. But yeah, there is that avenue for individuals that might not be computer savvy. Email our office. We'll send out a paper copy of that to them by email. A lot of times we suggest if you just go to your public library, they have computers and sometimes they can assist you with filling that out. Or if you have a friend, if you have trouble with computers, you have a friend or something that might be able to get you online and help you walk you through it. That's always an avenue. But we do have the paper form. We're happy to send that out. Just realize that there's going to be a turnaround time until you actually receive that CD 200 in the mail. All right, well, thank you for joining us today. It doesn't appear like there are any additional questions, but our contact slide is up there. Please feel free to reach out to our office. Be happy to help you or answer any questions that you might have. Again, thanks for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.